Hi, today we're going to talk about cultural intelligence and in particular knowledge. So remember, there are four capacities that comprise cultural intelligence. Cultural intelligence can be abbreviated CQ. Your CQ drive, how much you want to cross the distance between you and your counterpart in the other culture. Your CQ knowledge, what you know about the other culture or about cultures in general. Your CQ strategy and your CQ action. We'll talk about strategy and action later, but today we're going to talk about knowledge. If you've been following the other videos on this channel, you have already run into things like Hofstede's cultural dimensions. You've run into Donald Smith's onion and the behaviors and the experiences and the social authorities and the core. You've encountered different ways to approach culture, different angles to come at the study of what makes cultures up or makes a particular culture up. So this is like another angle. Some of these things will be familiar to you from the other videos, and some will be novel to you. So let's jump in. When we talk about culture, knowing about culture, we're talking mostly about knowing about the systems and the values, the cultural systems and the cultural values. So again, this is all taken, the vast majority of it is taken from literature that has been written by Dr. David Livermore, and it's available through the CQ Center. So systems, economic system, capitalist versus socialist. You're going to see a lot of verses in here, and it's not that they're opposed necessarily, and it's not that they're always clean categories. There's more like a continuum, and sometimes it's not just two things, but it makes it easier when you think of a continuum as having two poles. So capitalist versus socialist. And this refers to how they think about money, how money should be used, how money is gained, what is done with money, and how the economic systems work. Any given culture will be probably more capitalist or more socialist, or it will be on a journey between these two. Family, kinship versus nuclear family. When people think us, we, or when they think about the group of people that they're supposed to kind of participate in their economic well-being. They're supposed to kind of help pay the bills, or they're supposed to participate in weddings and funerals, and they're supposed to, when we think of who should be at a Thanksgiving or at a name the holiday based on the culture, that gives you a clue about what they think about family. How big is the us that owes one another the loyalties of family? Is it mom and dad and the kids, or is it a larger group? Educational. Do we teach our children, do the senior members of the society teach the junior members of the society through formal means or informal means primarily? When we think about who is responsible for education, when we think about who is responsible to guard the right to learning, when we think about the means that we use to convey the things that we think are central to what it means to be us or to be a functioning adult in our part of the world, who does that and how is it done? Is it formal or informal? Legal and political, formal laws versus informal governance. This one's a little bit tricky because there are a lot of places in the world that have formal laws, but the laws aren't written to tell the governing people how to govern. The laws are written as they're just tools in a tool bag that the governing bodies or the governors, the actual individuals, the persons with power, can reach in the tool bag and pull out this law and say, I want you to do this, and I'm going to use this law to make you do it. That's informal governance using formal governmental systems, right? So this one can be tricky to see. Just because a place has a constitution doesn't mean it's ruled by it. Religious, rational versus mystical. And there are no world religions that just fall cleanly into one of these. Within Christianity, there's some really left-brainy, super cognitive experiences intrinsically to be distrusted streams, and there are streams that the left-brainy streams would refer to as almost magical, and therefore to be distrusted. And the magical streams look at the left-brainy streams, and the mystical streams look at the left-brainy streams, and they think, do you only know about this, or do you know it? The same thing can be said of Islam. there are really academic, very very thoughtful, carefully considered versions of Islam, and there are mystical like versions of Islam, like Sufism, for example. And you have it in many systems. The idea here isn't to say which world religion is practiced, okay, then you are mystical or you are rational. The idea is to understand how the culture you're looking at, you're engaging, how they perceive how God is known, or how the spiritual is known, the invisible is known, or how the big super questions that order life, how those things are to be asked and pursued, rationally or mystically. And then artistic, solid versus fluid. If you travel to a city, even if you just ride the big red tour bus, you're going to be able to see pretty quickly if clean straight lines and open straight lines of sight, if right angles are preferred, or if ebb and flow, or sort of circular, less direct ways of viewing things are more preferred. If you were to travel to Spain, for example, and you were to go to Madrid, or you were to go to Barcelona, you would have two completely different architectural experiences as you ride the red bus. And that tells you something about the artistic preferences of two different states inside the same country. And you'll begin to understand why they insist that they're culturally different from one another. Okay? So these are the systems, and one way to approach knowing a culture is to understand where they land in these continua of systems. Another way is to ask about their norms and values. Event time versus clock time. I've told a story in another video that I'll just tell quickly again here about a guy in Papua New Guinea who needed to get up a mountain. And he said, "When are we going up the mountain?" And the tribal folk said, "Well, right now. We're going to go now. We're going to go now." And so he just stood around and waited, you know? He said, "Okay, when are we going?" And they're like, "Well, the chief died. We're going to have the funeral, and then we're going to go up the mountain." "Oh, when are we going to have the funeral?" "Right now. We're going to have it right now." "Okay." So he's waiting. Finally, like late in the afternoon, they have the funeral, and then, or late, like in the middle of the day, they have the funeral. In the afternoon, they get ready to go up the mountain. And he'd been asking since early morning, and he's like, "You said we were going to go right now. I'm afraid I'm not understanding." And later he learned that the term for right now, today, and before the sun sets are all the same term. This culture doesn't run on clock time; it runs on event time. You have less obvious, but still really easy to understand versions of this. When you there are videos all over YouTube, and it's sort of a joke about Germans meeting Indians for lunch. You know, clock time is characterized by an attention to the number on the clock and a responsibility to execute things in a manner that reflects your attention to the clock. If the clock says that the train is coming to Berlin at 8:02, it's not coming at 8:03. It's coming at 8:02, maybe 8:01. All right? But in an event time culture, whatever you're doing right now is what you're doing. And when that's done, that's when you go to the next thing. And it doesn't matter when the next thing starts. It matters that you finish the thing you're doing. Time is measured by the event you're in, not the numbers on the clock. High context versus low context. Context is sort of everything except your words. Everything except the actual dialogue that's happening. So in a high context culture, less is said. Less of the actual content you're trying to convey is said, and more is conveyed through the other 11 signal systems. In a low context culture, most of the meaning is conveyed through what is said, and the other signal systems are there just to scaffold and provide some context for what you're trying to say. Having a conversation between a high context and a low context individual, or between individuals from whichever kind of culture in a high context setting or a low context setting, these conversations can go very differently, and they can produce a great deal of misunderstanding if you don't know that that's what's happening. Individualism versus collectivism. Where do you end Do you end at the border of you, or do you end somewhere in the vague we? Who makes decisions, you or us? When things are happening, are they happening to you or to us? Are you an individual primarily, and therefore secondarily a member of a community, or is what it means to be you? Is your identity part of a community, and who you are is only defined and understood in terms of the role you play, or what part of the community, how you are related to the community that you're part of? Individualism or collectivism? Low versus high power distance. We've talked at length about this, and there's tons on the internet about this. Power distance is kind of best understood as the distance between people who have more power in the relationship, versus the people who don't, as perceived by the people who don't. It's not the people who have the power, what they think. It's the people who don't have the power. What do they think about this distance? How much distance do they perceive? And what do they feel about the rightness or wrongness of that? A high power distance culture has great distance between the leader and the led, and everyone's comfortable with that. And the low power distance culture has almost no distance between the leader and the led, and everyone's comfortable with that. And then low versus high uncertainty avoidance. We used to call this risk avoidance, but we don't call it that anymore, because people with very high uncertainty avoidance will still take great risks. I have friends, they're becoming dear friends. They both really like to avoid uncertainty. They like to be very sure about things. And so you'd expect them to have chosen to live in safe places, but they've chosen to live in Haiti and Afghanistan during earthquakes and wars. And you ask, like, why, how can you do that? And it's not that they're averse to risk. It's that they will enter a risky situation with a plan A, B, C, D, and E, as well as fallback protocols for when all 5 fail. Right? So they're not averse to risk. They're averse to walking into risk with great uncertainty. So they'll make plans, lots of plans. The Germans are actually known for innovation, but they are very uncertainty avoidant. They really don't like uncertainty. So they'll have plan A, B, C, D, and E, and then they'll take their risk. Other cultures are more comfortable with uncertainty, with ambiguity, and they're very permission granting, even when there isn't surety of success. So when you look at CQ knowledge, if you want to build your CQ knowledge, there's just one word for it, and it's research. You have to learn. You can't see my word, research. You have to learn. You have to go look for the information. You have to go find where the information is, and you got to find out. And you got to kind of map it. You got to kind of get a composite picture of the culture. And don't try to look at the culture through only one of these things, through only one of these paths, or only one of these facets. Try to build a composite picture of the culture by asking all of these questions persistently until you get answers. All right, that's CQ knowledge. Thanks.